Welcome back in Minnesota Gophers fans to the Gophers Nation YouTube channel. My name is Callaghan-Croley, publisher at Gophers Nation of the On3 Network, covering Minnesota football, basketball, and everything in between. Unfortunately, not great news here today on Monday afternoon for the Minnesota Golden Gophers as three-star offensive line prospect Mataalii Benjamin has announced his decommitment from the Golden Gophers. He becomes the third prospect to decommit from PJ Fleck's program this recruiting cycle, including the second offensive lineman join Norman, North Oklahoma's Daniel McMorris, who decommitted back on September 1st. Mataalii Benjamin, one of the top players in the state of Utah, ranked 12th in the Rivals industry rankings and 14th on Rivals within the Beehive State, a top 60 offensive tackle according to the industry rankings and a top 70 tackle according to the Rivals rankings themselves. I thought Benjamin, when he committed, could be a potential multi-year starter for the Gophers. I liked the size he would have for the Gophers on the end there at left or right tackle, and I did think he had the athleticism to be a high-quality Big Ten offensive tackle, but that is no longer going to be the case, at least for the Golden Gophers, as Benjamin announced his decision on Monday afternoon. We do have a statement from Mataalii Benjamin. He said, "I want to thank Minnesota and the coaching staff, especially Coach Callaghan and Coach Bain, for the time and effort they put into recruiting me and seeing my potential and for the opportunity they have given me. But after some careful thought and prayers and a talk with my family, I've decided that it is in my best interest to decommit and reopen my recruitment 100%. My family and I are thankful for the support I've received and wish nothing best but the best for Minnesota and its football program. Thank you, and please respect my decision." Of course, Benjamin is not the only prospect in this class to decommit from the Golden Gophers. He, as we said, joined not only Daniel McMorris, but he also joins fellow Utah prospect wide receiver Kai Meza, who decommitted last month from the Golden Gophers as well. If I can share that on the screen quickly here. As you can see, the Golden Gophers, Daniel McMorris there at the top, three-star prospect in the Rivals industry rankings, top 500. Mataalii Benjamin, a top 750 prospect nationally, and then Kai Meza there at the bottom, a top 1100 prospect in the country and a top 15 player in the state of Utah according to the Rivals industry rankings. All three-star prospects. I thought, McMorris is obviously the biggest loss of this cycle for the Gophers. He has unreal potential. I think he has a chance to be a formidable offensive tackle or guard for whoever he commits to in the future. Both Cal and Oklahoma are after him. I think Oklahoma is going to be a program to watch very closely there from him being from Norman. And he also trains very closely with Philadelphia Eagles star right tackle and former Oklahoma standout Lane Johnson. So that's something to watch there in that recruitment. Of course, the Gophers are not a threat in that one. With Kai Meza, we'll see what his recruitment brings. He has official visits to Kansas State and Colorado coming up. And then with Mataalii Benjamin, we'll see what happens with the Utah native and where he's ultimately going to end up in this class. He has no official visits scheduled currently going forward, so it is a little bit of a blank slate here. You look at his offer sheet: Oklahoma State, Arkansas, Utah, Texas A&M, Washington, Arizona, Nebraska, Washington State. If I had to guess, I'd be looking at those West Coast programs right now in this recruitment for Mataalii Benjamin, the likes of Utah, Washington, Washington State. I wouldn't be surprised if BYU gets their foot in the door here as well in this recruitment. It's going to be interesting to see where he lands, but ultimately this is a unfortunate loss for the Golden Gophers and offensive line coach Brian Callaghan. Obviously, the Golden Gophers offensive line now for the last 2.5 years has not really performed up to expectations for Callaghan and the Gophers. They've now lost two offensive line commitments. They're very high on. They're arguably their top two offensive line commitment. Sorry, not top two. Andrew Trout's in this class. He is by far and away the best of the offensive line commitments. But two of their top three offensive line commitments, in my opinion, in this 2026 recruiting class. And then you look back in the 2025 recruiting cycle, they lost offensive line commitments from Zach Staskowski, who ultimately signed with Oregon. He ended up as a top 50 prospect in the on-3 rankings, a top 120 prospect in the Rivals industry rankings. They also lost commitments from Texas prospect Nelson McGuire, another prospect who ended up in the top 150 nationally, top 225 in the industry rankings. And I believe those were the only two in that class from last year. But nonetheless, I mean, you look at those two, both those guys committed to the Gophers when they were not top prospects in the country. They see their stock rise as their recruitment, as their senior seasons progress. They ultimately decommit from the program. I believe Staskowski committed to Washington before flipping his commitment to Oregon. Nelson McGuire ultimately committed to Texas A&M. So on one end, it's a great sign that the Golden Gophers, last year were able to identify those top two offensive linemen, get them to commit to the program, and ultimately, while they weren't able to hold on to those, both of those guys turned into top on the Rivals / on-3 rankings, top 150 prospects in the country. That is a phenomenal talent identification early on in the process. But keeping a hold of these guys is a whole different ball game for the Golden Gophers, especially in the new age of NIL, where let's be honest, the almighty dollar does get thrown around, especially by programs such as Oregon and Texas A&M. It's hard to compete on that level if you're a program like Minnesota. It's, of course, not only a Minnesota issue on the recruiting trail, it's an issue that many programs are facing in the modern era. But when you're a program like Minnesota, you identify these talents early on, and then as their stock rises, you lose their commitments because other programs are coming sniffing around, offering, not just the opportunity to play for high-level programs competing for the college ball playoffs, but also the NIL that comes with playing for one of those programs. So definitely a tough commitment for Brian Callaghan, PJ Fleck, and the Golden Gophers here. They were very high on Mataalii Benjamin. I knew that. And they would have loved for him to be a part of this class, as, of course, they would for almost every single player that has ever decommitted. It just is what it is. That being said, I mean, it is still let's bring this back up here. It is still a good class for the Golden Gophers in the 2026 recruiting cycle. This is a top 40 class nationally, currently on the on-3 / Rivals rankings. You look at it, Andrew Trout still leads the way there as the top commitment in this class, a top 270 prospect in the Rivals industry rankings. Still have Roman Voss committed, Howie Johnson, another Minnesota prospect. Ryan Estrada, you want to talk about a kid that's flying under the radar, a guy that I think Minnesota has a hidden gem in. I think Ryan Estrada is a player that can come in immediately in 2026 and potentially have a impact on this running back room. Of course, a lot of that depends on who is part of this running back room in 2026. Is Darius Taylor going to be here? Who is going to remain on the roster from this year? Who's going to enter the transfer portal? A lot is still to be decided within that room, but I think Estrada has a chance to be a huge steal for the Gophers. Justin Hopkins, another guy I think has a chance to be a huge steal. I do love the potential of Gavin Meyer. Another guy that I think is a hidden gem for this program, one that they may have to, try their really hard to hold on to. I wouldn't be surprised if other programs come calling for him here in the last couple weeks of the cycle, is Lafayette, Indiana native Aiden H. I mean, just a tremendous talent. I think he has a chance to be that next Anthony Smith on the defensive line for the Gophers. Maybe not as big as Anthony Smith. He's probably going to more so end up on the rush end because of his size, but I think he has a chance to be a dominant defensive end / pass rusher for the Gophers at the next level. Really excited to see what he can do once he arrives in the Twin Cities. And I mean, there is still plenty of potential within this class. I like the upside of quite a few players in the class overall, as you can see the remainder of what the Gophers have so far put together here in this 2026 recruiting class that ranks 34th in the national recruiting rankings and 10th in the Big Ten, 5 spots up from where they finished last year. It's a good class. It's a good class for the Gophers. It's definitely one of the better ones that they've had under PJ Fleck so far. We'll see how they can finish. They are currently, of course, in the running to add more pieces to their 2026 recruiting class here in the upcoming weeks. You can find out more about those late emerging 2026 targets over in today's Gopher Nation War Room on Gophers Nation on3.com/sites/Gophers-Nation. If you need more reason to go over to Gophers Nation and subscribe today, join Gophers Nation now for $1 your first week and enjoy a complimentary year of The Athletic included with your membership. That is a great deal you will not find anywhere else. Come to Gophers Nation for all your Minnesota Golden Gophers needs, and then head on over to The Athletic for all your professional sports needs. They also have some great college football content over there with a great staff. But if you want more college football news and not just Gophers Nation news or news about the Golden Gophers, but news from around the country, On3 is the place to be. With your Gophers Nation membership, you get elite team recruiting coverage of the program you love, the Golden Gophers, but you also get access to the premier network in all of college football, the On3 Rivals Network, with some of the best staff writers in the country. I mean, nowhere else are you going to find the likes of Andy Staples, Steve Wiltfong, Ari Wasserman. I mean, the list goes on and on. Brett McMurphy. We have an unbeatable group of writers here at On3 that you will not find anywhere else, that not just helps give you great news about the Minnesota Golden Gophers, but they help give you great news about college football as a whole at On3, as well as Rivals, where you can find all your national recruiting news outside the Golden Gophers as well. Of course, we, focus on the Golden Gophers at Gophers Nation, but I mean, it's never a bad idea to check in on what Wisconsin's doing on the recruiting trail, what Iowa's doing on the recruiting trail, what other programs within the Big Ten are doing on the recruiting trail. So, I mean, it is a fantastic opportunity right now to sign up for Gophers Nation with that special offer that we do have going on. You will not find that offer anywhere else. I can promise you that. It is a truly unbeatable offer. Again, that's join Gophers Nation now for $1 your first week and enjoy a complimentary year of The Athletic included with your membership. But beyond that, everybody, I mean, I just wanted to come on today and talk a little bit about this Mataalii Benjamin decommitment. Definitely a tough loss for the Golden Gophers on the recruiting trail, a big one for the Golden Gophers on the recruiting trail. He was going to be a key member of this offensive line class for the Gophers, and one that they ultimately, will have a hard time, I think, replacing in this class. Just his upside. They will, of course, be looking around the rest of the country, including throughout the Midwest, to see who they could potentially replace Benjamin within this cycle, but he is going to definitely be a tough one to replace. A tough loss for the Gophers, a 3-star prospect with a high upside. And again, we don't expect, as they rarely do, we don't expect this one to come back around for the Golden Gophers either. We expect him ultimately to stay out on the West Coast with one of those programs. Utah could be very tough to beat, and we'll see if BYU enters his recruitment. But nonetheless, everybody, thank you for tuning into this, a little bit of an emergency pod on the Mataalii Benjamin decommitment. We are going to be doing more of these quick hitting podcasts going forward on Golden Gophers news, whether it's key injuries, commitments, and much more. So, everybody, thank you for tuning in again. We'll talk to you all soon. Be sure to tune into the Golden Gopher Hour podcast later this week as we preview that Michigan State game, and we will talk to you then.